Welcome back, everyone. There's been a major development, and it's one that could carry serious legal consequences. Wayfair has officially responded, and the actions taken by Blake Lively's legal team along with Ryan Reynolds' attorneys may have crossed a line that courts take extremely seriously. We're not talking about a minor filing mistake here. This situation raises real concerns about violations of a federal protective order, which can trigger sanctions, contempt findings, and even separate civil litigation. Here's what happened. Yesterday, a letter was filed on the docket by Blake Lively's attorney, Kristen Bender. Attached to that letter was a deposition transcript from Wayfair's attorneys. The transcript clearly identified specific portions that were designated as confidential and flagged for redaction. Those sections were highlighted, but crucially, nothing was actually redacted. No black bars. No sealing. Once filed, the document became publicly accessible through the court system. That matters because courts are very clear about why protective orders exist. Discovery can include sensitive personal information, home addresses, phone numbers, emails, financial details, information that can be dangerous if released publicly. Early in this case, Blake Lively herself asked the court for a protective order, citing fears of doxing and threats to her personal safety. The court granted that request and imposed strict rules, with explicit warnings that violations could lead to serious consequences. By March, a formal protective order was entered. It didn't just suggest caution, it mandated it. The order spelled out that personally identifying information must be protected, securely maintained, and never publicly disclosed. It also warned that willful violations could result in contempt of court, monetary sanctions, and ongoing court jurisdiction even after the case ends. The order went even further. It required that any filing containing protected material must be submitted under seal, with a properly redacted version filed publicly. Social security numbers, home addresses, personal phone numbers, financial data, all of it was strictly off-limits. And if a breach occurred, the receiving party had an obligation to immediately notify the producing party and cooperate to fix the damage. Despite this, issues kept arising. Over the summer, filings associated with Blake Lively repeatedly included unredacted email addresses, phone numbers, and in some instances, physical addresses. The situation escalated to the point where the judge issued a second order, docket 619, specifically reinforcing that addresses and contact details must be redacted going forward, without needing prior court approval. Fast forward to yesterday's filing. The deposition transcript that was uploaded publicly included Jamie Heath's home address and Justin Baldoni's current residential address in a different state than where he previously lived. According to testimony, Baldoni relocated due to safety concerns stemming from this litigation and has since hired security. None of that information was publicly known, and none of it should have appeared on the docket. Beyond addresses, the transcript also contained sensitive financial data, internal company information, details about lost projects, and references to former employees with no relevance to the case. All of this was material the parties had specifically identified as confidential. Yet it was made public anyway. What makes this more serious is what didn't happen next. When an attorney accidentally files protected material, the standard procedure is to immediately notify the court and request that the document be sealed or restricted. That didn't occur here. Instead, a court clerk noticed the issue and restricted access after the fact. No prompt notification was sent to the court, and opposing counsel was not alerted. By then, the damage was already done. The documents appeared on Court Listener, where they could be downloaded freely. Copies are now circulating, and once information like this is public, it cannot realistically be undone. This afternoon, Wayfair's counsel, Jonathan Bark, filed a sealed letter informing the court of the breach and citing both the original protective order and the follow-up order. That tells us two important things. First, the court has already warned this legal team before, and second, Wayfair is now formally putting the issue before the judge. So what happens next? While no outcome is guaranteed, the law here is clear. Attorneys are obligated to comply with protective orders. Violations can result in court sanctions, fines, fee shifting, evidentiary penalties, or findings of civil contempt. Importantly, in federal court, Filings are legally attributed to the party, not just their lawyers. That means Blake Lively herself may be held directly accountable. Sanctions could include striking filings, permanently removing documents from the record, excluding evidence, or imposing monetary penalties. There's also the possibility of separate civil claims. A protective order functions as a binding agreement between parties. Breaching it can give rise to claims such as breach of contract, invasion of privacy, negligence, or emotional distress. There's also context that cannot be ignored. Earlier in 2025, an individual allegedly targeted Steve Sarowitz after obtaining his address, resulting in criminal charges involving arson threats, ransom demands, and threats against family members. This demonstrates that the risk here is not hypothetical. The release of residential addresses, especially involving individuals with heightened security concerns, carries real-world consequences. Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath are not public figures in the way Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are. They do not list their homes under LLCs. Their addresses were not public knowledge. Both have minor children. And the protective order existed precisely to prevent this type of exposure. What complicates this further is the contrast in arguments. Just last week, Blake Lively argued that disclosing the names of her friends would endanger their safety and require additional security measures. Yet here, actual residential addresses were filed without redaction. That inconsistency will not be lost on the court. At minimum, this appears to be a serious procedural failure. At worst, it could be viewed as a willful disregard of court orders. If the court determines the violation was intentional, the consequences escalate significantly. Where this goes next is up to the judge. But one thing is clear, a case that was nearing resolution has now opened the door to entirely new legal exposure. The dynamics shift when the party that has been on offense suddenly finds itself defending against claims of court order violations. I'll be watching closely as this unfolds. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this breakdown helpful, give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.